Well, what are we doing today? Well, it's an electronic video, and we have some bits. Now, of course, it's been locked down in Victoria still, and of course my apprentice is homeschooling, and my workshop computer, my old workstation computer, has some issues, and WebEx also has some issues. Primarily that WebEx meetings won't let you configure the microphone and camera until you're already in a meeting, not beforehand. Very poor on their behalf. Anyway, the upshot of all of this is we've moved to a new machine, and it has no preamplification of the microphone. So plugging in a traditional microphone with just a condenser insert doesn't work very well. She only gets maybe about 10 decibel of volume on it. So I've cobbled together what I can find. Now, this is an old Jaycar kit, as you might guess. It's a little preamplifier kit, pretty universal one. This was amplifying the microphone for my surveillance cameras, and I found another solution for that since. But the box that this was in got full of water, and whilst you can't probably tell at the moment, it was full of water. And there's along here, there's a lot of like dull and dry solder joins and a bit of corrosion happening in here. Although I won't really say dry solder joins, because I actually did this board. I assembled it in quite a hurry, which is why there's such horrible design stuff on here. I think I did this with a gas soldering iron in the field. So yeah, I'm going to rework all of this and get this ship shape. Now, it does call for a 10k resistor here, and that handles the volume. We have a 25k linear pot, I think this is. It could be a log, I'm not sure. Probably a linear. Now, my local Jaycar store had a project box and some connectors here, but no panel mount sockets. They didn't have any of them in stock, and I kind of have to have this done by Monday. So I've scrounged through my collection of stuff and found a 6.5mm socket, and I found an adapter down to 3.5mm. So that will serve as my input, and I'm going to use a pigtail for these guys, just because that's all I can find. I'm going to add a snazzy little light in here. This is a little 12 volt illuminated LED, so we can tell when it's on. And I've got to find a power supply, so I'll be digging through my collection of supplies for that. And I think I've got a few DC power sockets somewhere. So, how to do this? Well, I could use the 5 Ps and say prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So I might go out and prepare a power supply. So I'll dig that up out of the workshop, and probably a bit of cable and a few other things, and we should be cooking with gas. Anyway, off to the workshop. All right, we're hiding out in the shed, and I'm going through all my repository of bits and pieces, and in here I have my mystery pile of power packs of various voltages, and I'm going to need a switch mode, otherwise we're going to have a pretty noisy arrangement. So that's a 12 volt half amp. That will probably do, but I was aiming for something like maybe 9 volt. It's also 12. Let's have a good look in here. Got a little Cisco one. What's this one? Cisco pack. It's also 12 volt, but it would be very smooth, and it's quite... You know what? Look, we've got a volume control, so we can feed it 12 volts. We'll fish this one out. Got a figure 8 plug, and the lead actually came out, so I think we might go with that one. Yeah, I could find a 9 volt. I do have a few in there, but I just... CBF. What are you? You're 15 volts. Not even worth it. All right, we're going to go with our little Cisco power supply. It should be more than enough to run a preamp and probably a couple of lights and stuff. All right, looks like I need to go and rearrange some of these too. All right, we'll be back. Right, well, we've jumped back inside and we're getting our stuff laid out. I'm having to open another Christmas tree here. We used to call these things Christmas trees. I call them what they should be, which is a step drill. Until I worked for a comms company, and the colloquial term at that comms company for these things was Christmas tree. And the terminology has kind of stuck. Alright, so that should allow me to get some suitable holes. I think the smallest is 10 mil. I'm going to need to get a drill bit. No, I think 10 mil should fit that. And the rest should be okay. Alright, what else have I got to do? I think I've got to take these bits out and check that that actually fits. It does. Now, I would ultimately like to have panel mount sockets for everything on this, but I just don't have access to them at the moment. So I'm going to do what I can. And looking at this little LED over here, I think I am going to need to get some actual drill bits. I do have a skinnier one of those somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. It would appear I don't need to get a skinnier one. I don't need to get drill bits rather, because I've got a skinnier one. And this one starts at 4 mil. Much more suitable. I'll put the new one away in the cupboard. Now, that should answer that. So I think what I'm going to do for a start is I'm going to clean up this a little bit, get some of the hot glue off that, because that's going to be how I have to mount it, because I have no locking nut for that. I'll get my holes all worked out. I think if I do that here, I should be able to mount amplifier in behind with a reasonable amount of room. And I think I'll do cable entries on the other end, try and do it in line a little bit. Alright, I'm going to get some holes drilled off camera. We'll be back. Alright, we've got some holes drilled, and one of them walked off the little marker point a bit too far, but this is a bit of a hack job. We're not really doing this for any sort of quality look. We're doing this at a short notice in a hurry to solve the problem. I'll be solving this probably better to a greater degree at a later date. This is just the stuff we do to get through. And I am actually, in between filming here, I'm actually watching Premier Daniel Andrews' address about lockdown. And the numbers are coming down at this point. And he's talking about easing restrictions a bit. Not helped by the nuff-nuffs that protested everything, but I'm not here to take a political stance. But I do think that some things in life are fairly inevitable, and pandemics are one of those very highly probable things. But anyway, let's get back to our electronic stuff. I'm fitting all this stuff in here. I'm not using proper spanners. This is really a hack job. Now, you'll probably notice there is a potential for this to spin around and touch against that LED body. That body is actually isolated. It's not grounded or anything. But yeah, we'll probably fold that leg up just in case to avoid that. I don't actually have a proper volume knob anywhere either. But that will be fine. We can probably print one or something at a later date. So we've got a few of these things in. Now this is for our main headphone socket, which I need to clean up first. So that should mount in there. Our board should mount in the back like so. Volume control is going to sit over the main board. And our LED should fit over the top like that. It should go in relatively well. That is going to connect into our main socket. So that will hang out there. That will be microphone in. We'll have audio out on one of these guys, and we will have power socket. And because the power plug on the power adapter we found is wrong, we're going to put another one, another 5.5, 2.5 here. Just because I stock up on those regularly, I have quite a few. And we have our screws. Now we're going to need some small hookup wire, namely this red stuff, which we are going to use 0.12 mil. Now, normally I'd use shielded cable, but I also am very short on the quality shielded cable. The microphone cable will have it. I'm going to use figure 8 for both the power and the output, namely because that's what I have, and I think by the time it's amplified, it should be enough to overcome some of the background noise. We can sort that out with levels. In the meantime, this is a bit of a tough job after all. Anyway, I think the first order of duty is to clean this up. So I'm going to reach behind the camera and turn on my soldering iron. I'm going to blob a blue tack, and we're going to set this down and we're going to clean this up. let's get some exhaust fan in the way and get some other junk out of the way. Right, let's clean this headphone socket up here. We'll turn on our extraction fan, which was quiet when I first designed and installed it, but now it's got friggin' noisy. Not entirely sure why. Now I'm going to take a bit of flux core solder here and do this just to help the thermal conductivity of the iron a bit and to help melt the existing solder off these terminals. And I do have some solder wick somewhere that would probably be handy about now, but oh well, whatever. We just really need it clean enough to work at this point. We're not trying to do things properly, we're just trying to make them work. I think I'll cut that tail off that thing later. This is actually really loose, I might just trim that a little bit more here and we'll clean this all off. See what we can get off. Apparently this has been used a number of times, probably in a hurry as well. The problem when you're using salvage stuff is sometimes it's quite a bit of work to use. Right, now where's my flush cutters? I have a pair on hand nearly all the time. This one being such a dry solder joint and so loose that might even just pop right off. Ah, that would explain a lot of things. That was never actually properly in use. I have to double check that I've got my connections right. I think while I'm here I'm going to tin this properly. Apparently that was never done properly, whoever used this the first time. Now it might be why I have it. I often salvage things like this out of hardware that doesn't work, and that dry solder joint could explain very clearly why this didn't work. Got a big blob of solder hanging out of the bottom of that other terminal, so we'll address that in a moment. Clear this up and we'll get this bit out of the way. Oh, magnetic soldering iron tip can be a bit of a problem. Right, so they're considerably cleaner than they were. I'll trim all that, push all these off into the bin between my legs, because that's how we roll here. We put stuff between our legs. Anyway, now I'm going to put 3 leads on that and then I can test it. Let's find my cable. I'm going to attach a couple of cables here. For a change, this little orange stopper on this test is actually going to work. My apprentice is having some kind of a malfunction at the moment. These things have pretty well revolutionized the way I do things and the angle of my teeth as well. Since I was a kid, I used to do a lot of this stuff with my teeth. So the other thing I don't like about these is there's a bit of static in the top here, and it seems to hold the ends of the leads in there. Alright, we'll tin these up and attach them. Some leads to tin here. And I hear the sounds of somebody in the front yard. They'll probably trip the perimeter beam soon, and you'll probably hear that. But just trim these guys. What I'm doing here is I'm heating the wire, and I am inserting the solder between the wire and the iron. Or rather, I'm using the wire itself to melt the solder. Typically people would do that the other way up, and for the sake of the camera I'm going to do it this way up. So we're going to heat our wire and then we're going to bring our solder in there and let it wick in. So again, we're going to heat our wire and then wick our solder into the wire. Alright, a couple of wires to re-add here. And I think I'll be bridging probably 2 of these because I'm going to be using a mono setup. I'm just going to hook 3 wires up and we can tackle it from there. Add this one in here. I've got to go other way around with the iron. So Blue Tack makes this magic. My apprentice and her noise on the other hand, maybe not. I've got to clean up some of these posts. It's really sort of, I think, designed for wire wrapping. I'll give you solder posts on these, but I install them anyway. They do make soldering at least easy. So you got to remove the things. Whoop. I nearly pulled the whole post out there. Alright, so there's two grounds. There's the output and the 12 volt line. This is the input and the input ground. Obviously not a common ground, although I can probably flip the board over and check that. And try not to melt that component. I've lost a bit of thermal conductivity. We'll do a little bit of fresh solder in there. We'll rip that off. Oakley dokley. See if we have common ground. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. We have to redo a bunch of solder joins on here because they all look nasty. Yeah, they're the nasty ones on this end. They're all oxidized. This could take me more time than I have, so I might focus on the ones that just look the worst. Yeah. Oh, I don't like the way that's puddling. Oh, I'm going to hit this with some circuit board cleaner first. Stuff's usually pretty good, especially with a scrub from a toothbrush while it's wet. We'll change our camera angle a bit. Now that main transistor connection there is going to be a problem. This board was like very badly corroded on the bottom, but luckily I got to it before the worst of it all happened. Now I should, in theory, really remove most of this solder and redo it all, but this is a bit of a hack job. Yeah, transistors likely to cause us some issues if I don't get that right. So I'm just trying to really reflow these joins and hope that I can get some of that oxidization off. It's balling up a bit here. I'm just cleaning my iron every step here. Actually, you know what, it might be time for the solder wick. In comes the solder wick, and we probably need a bigger blob of blue tack too, because that cleaning spray temporarily reduces the cleaning solvent's ability to do its job, and also the blue tack. I said that backwards. The cleaning solvent temporarily reduces the blue tack's adhesive abilities. Try and soak a bit of this solder up. Oh, doesn't even want to do that. I really should find my flux paste. That would probably make this a lot easier. Try and get some of this to soak up into that solder wick there. There we go. Now we're starting to see a better shape. I think we've got some of that oxidization off. I'll get a little bit of fresh solder in here, and hopefully they look good, although they don't look too bad now. We just want to really pull that edge back in. I get so used to using flux core solder, it's a bit of a foreign thing for me to have to use flux separately to do things. But we'll get there. Here we go. Trying to just drag that solder wick under there. Alright, so we've just got really two more, which are not as much of a problem. This component here isn't as much of an issue to the circuit. Oh, I had it great, and then I touched it again. Yep, I screwed it. Trying to get a little bit more in there, and wow, this solder is really oxidized, and that board is starting to peel up too. Alright, flux paste time. We'll be back. Alright, a tiny little bit of flux paste on this area here. Get that in there. Hopefully this will help a bit. And probably across these guys as well. All that in there. Alright, and there's a couple of the posts that I overheated before. We'll put a little bit on them. The rest I think is going to be pretty fine. The trouble is you do for all your kids, or the lengths you go to for your kids. Oh, that looks much better. Oh, that post is not hot enough to bond to the solder. And we have a tremendous amount of solder on there now. Right, here we go, solder wick. Suck up some of that for me. You watch, we'll end up with a piece of solder wick stuck on the board. Wow, this is not my day. Alright, we'll be back. I'm going to do this without the distraction of a camera. Alright, well, we've done a bit of a cleanup. Now it's time to hit it with a contact cleaner and ruin some more blue tack. And hopefully this should... It's not perfect by a long shot, but it should work. And yeah, our blue tack will take a little bit to re-sticky. That's right, in the meantime I can brush out these hunks of solder and brush them into the bin as well. Alright, this is our board as it stands. Again, not a perfect job, but might be a bit more functional than it was. I'm hoping this works. I've gone this far and I've spent money on it. Alright, we'll be back in a sec. One thing I do like to do with, if I've used flux on my bench, is use a bit of spray and wipe, which is nearly out. Get a bit of spray and wipe and let it soak there for a bit. And I use a workshop rag to wipe this up that I can discard. Flux can be pretty nasty stuff if you let it get out of hand. And it's also very sticky and adhesive, especially that gel type stuff that I use. And this is where I sit my arms a lot, hence the conductive foil strip here for my grounding. Alright, let's start putting this in the box. I'm going to jump a few steps here and get us moving. I'm skipping a couple of steps. I've already started to connect the audio socket here, but I thought I would stop for a minute whilst I solder left-handed and find that my lead is stuck. We're going to solder left-handed here, and we're going to bridge this audio lead over to the other side. So we're bridging left and right audio here. Right, so that should be only one lead we need to connect back to the main board. And this is, of course, our microphone input socket. And I'm trying to solder these parallel on with the solder post, and of course I should have done that in the other direction. It's going to be a big blob on that post. Again, not ideal. I'd much prefer it to be like the other one, but yeah, it's the proverbial happens. Alright, we're going to give contacts a bit of a clean up while we're at it. Alright, pick off my little blob of solder out of my blue tack because it'll cause me troubles down the track. Now we're going to connect our LED next, and then we'll connect our power and the other stuff, and we'll do some testing. We're going to skip that bit because I'm now in a hurry. We've got a few more connections on. We've got our input socket. We have our 12 volt supply here, which I appear to have wired wrong. I've got the output on the grounds. Wow, this is what happens when you rush. Yep, I need to flip these around. We'll be back. So this looks a little bit better. We have our ground pole with ground for both audio and 12 volt in. We have our second ground post running off to our LED, and we have 12 volt positive here and our 12 volt ground. That's our audio output with our trace wire on that. Okay, let's shove this in the box with some hot glue, just because you guys scream about that, and we'll put some plugs and see if it works. Guys, we're going with a slightly different camera angle, mostly because my camera tripod's got a loose screw at the moment. So I'm going to use my typical glue stick method, which is Mr. Stoner Torch Green, and we're going to get this hot glue nice and hot. Once again, I apologise about the horrible buzzing sound that has been through this whole segment of the video. That is a little tiny piece of plastic that's in the way of one of the fans, and it's annoying me too, I assure you. Alright, let's chuck this board in. We'll stick it down with just enough to stop it rattling around in there. I don't think that's even enough. It's not really sticking down there. Need to build that up a bit. And yes, I had a glue stick in my mouth. Alright, let's just put a big blob of that stuff in there. Come on, break away. Needs to be a little bit hotter. We'll get there. Alright, horrible hot glue job, but again, we're in a hurry. Alright, we'll hold that down there till my fingers burn, and that should stay in position. And I think we're going to do the same thing for this socket, but as you can probably tell, I'm having some trouble grasping things. MS is catching up with me, and I'm a little bit overdue for it on the average night anyway, so we're going to glue that in position. So we'll cut straight back to when that bit's done. We can turn these fans off for a bit. We've got it mostly situated. Yes, there's hot glue everywhere, and yes, it looks messy, and no, it's not done properly. I know all of those things, but I'm going to reiterate, this has been done with recycled parts at a short notice with a bit of a limited supply chain, so we need to be able to get all this in here and make it work. I'm hoping that goes on the top there and works. Alright, so really the only thing we need to do before we go and actually test this, which in hindsight I probably should have done before I got this far, is to put some plugs on the end of these things. Now that is my power because I haven't exposed it, and this is my signal, and I'm going to double check that anyway, but yes, that definitely is signal. Alright, let's get some plugs on it. A quick little tip when you're putting these on, I've pushed these two pins together for the left and right channel, soldered them together, and then tacked a wire on, slid some heat shrink over it. There's also this supplied little sleeve in here that goes on top as well. These guys with the metal sleeve on them, it's really important that you do that, otherwise you end up destroying things. So this metal sleeve can go over the top. That's our audio plug in left and right bridged. Now we need power, and we're almost done. Now we've got the noisy fans back on again, and we have our DC power plug. These have an official name, but I can never quite narrow it down to exactly what it is. I used to think they were named Canon plugs, but I think I'm probably wrong. Anyway, the trick to doing these guys, aside from tinning it, is getting your cables trimmed to the right length, because it's very easy to have a short circuit with these guys too. And I think a little bit of heat shrink is going to go in this one as well. A little bit here. Bring that up so the heat doesn't shrink it on the cable. And this didn't look like it got really hot enough, so we'll a little bit more heat into that one. We might not bother because our blue tack is sagging, but we need to pull our pin up slightly, and then we will get this one hot. A little bit of fresh solder on the iron just to help the heat conductivity there, and we will actually, if I've got a heat shrink on this, we're going to make life a little easier. We're actually going to swing underneath this terminal and go underneath. So heat shrink will help stop our short circuit, and that will also mean it will fit in the shroud a little better. We'll peel that off our blue tack and pick a bit more of that off the side there, and Mr. Stoner Torch Green can just give it a quick little whiz for the heat shrink. Alright, there's that. And this is usually at the point in which you realise, I'm not even going to bother with a strain relief here, by the way, but this is the point at which you realise you forgot to add the shroud on it. And this cable is altogether a smidgen too big for this cable, so it's a bit of a tough job getting it back on. There's a DC plug. Now the only last thing we've got to do is screw this back together and change the plug on our power supply, and check the polarity while we're at it. Well, we're up to smoke test time. I've got the plug already mounted onto the lead. We're going to turn our fans back on again, just in case we actually get magic smoke coming out of this. And let's blue tack this down because it's lightweight. Let's do this. Well, we have polarities right. We've got a green light. Now let's see if we can get any sort of audio throughput on it. Yeah, I'll have to grab a microphone. Right, so it's next desk cleaning. Get all the residual stuff off and any sort of lead particles or whatever is hanging around here. We don't want that on the desk area I use frequently. Should really get one of those cutting mats one day, but in purpose I found I go through, or in practice I found I go through them pretty quickly. Alrighty, now let's get the parts required for this test. So we have our main preamplifier, and we have our microphone, it's already got a bit of blue tack on it. We have output lead. I don't need the output lead because I already put a male plug on it. So we'll use, for our audio source, we're going to plug in directly to that, and for our power source we're going to go to this. Let's turn these on. Now I'm going to put these on my head and test them first, and then I'll put them near the camera. Right, so I'm going to put the headphones over the edge of the camera here, and we'll see if you can actually hear what's going on. So there's a lot of 50 Hertz hum in here, but I can hear that actually quite loudly now that I've done this. I think it might be the socket into the headphones. Let's move this over. Oh, that's actually really loud. Alright. Yeah, alright. I think I found my problem. The problem was actually the connection to the headset itself was a bit loose. Okay, so this is actually, I'm listening purely through this microphone, through this headset right now, and it's actually quite clear. So I think we got rid of our 50 Hertz hum. There's a little bit here still, but I think we should be okay. Alright, I'm going to call this quits on the video, and I'm going to go and test this at a later point. We'll unplug from my headset. Alright, and we'll turn these headsets off. So this is going to be here so I can get a bit of a thumbnail for a bit. But yeah, I think this is going to work. I might have had a win. So I'm going to plug it into the Apprentice's machine. We're going to call the video quits, and we're going to go, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. And I hope this was informative. I'm not sure why I'm doing these videos anymore, but I still am.